How do you solve a problem like Mattias? If you ask a lot of Sabres fans, it's trade, send down, or cut. Hey y'all, Chris here from Rippdog Sports. This is the SaberCast. Today we're continuing our 23-player and 23-day series, and today's player is Mattias Samuelsson. Mattias Samuelsson, of course, a controversial defenseman and assistant captain last year for the Sabres. Controversial in that a lot of the fan base want him gone, and we'll get into the reasons why as we go through this video. So Mattias Samuelsson is a 25-year-old, 6'4", 225-pound defenseman who can play both right-handed and left-handed, both as a righty and a lefty defenseman. He was drafted 32nd overall in the 2018 NHL draft. Yes, that is the same draft that Rasmus Dahlin was drafted number 1 overall in. So, you immediately sense a connection, right? They're tied together. And from the beginning, right, it seemed the Sabres wanted that connection to be true. The move for a defensive player who could play righty, who is a defensive defenseman as opposed to Dahlin, who always projected as an offensive defenseman. Sabres were hoping they had found in one draft a pairing which would be effective kind of for a very, very long period of time. And by drafting them together, you have the opportunity for them to develop together, rise to the system together, build a strong chemistry, provide a strong, stable, top defensive pairing. It sounds perfect, right? But that doesn't take into account for the hiccups that occur during that development. But even so, the Sabres move forward with this dream. And in 2023, Samuelsson received his current contract, which is a 7-year, $30 million contract. At that time, Dahlin's talent and ability were obvious, but he hadn't quite broken out just yet. Samuelsson had struggled a fair bit. He'd had a kind of average to below average seasons to that point, and he was really struggling defensively his whole career. So let's look at it a bit here. So, of course, Samuelsson made his NHL debut in 2020, which is a tough time to make an NHL debut. He played 109 games through his first 3 seasons in Buffalo. He'd never played more than 55 games in a season. And over those first 3 seasons, he scored 2 goals, had 20 assists, and 22 points overall. And his plus-minus was -4. Mostly his first few seasons, he had a really big plus-minus. And then that third season, I think he was like +14, and he brought it back to -4. He was in the negative in terms of like the comparative Corsi and Fenwick stuff, which means that compared to the players around him, he was struggling a bit, but it wasn't major. And he was serviceable, and the Sabres, very young at that time, he would have only been 22, and the Sabres wanted to lock him up, so they locked him up, and I think they, in terms of average annual value, it's a little more than $4 million a year, so it's not too bad if you still projected him as a top pairing defenseman for 7 years. A bit of a risk with the length. And now it doesn't look quite so good because of the length. But the idea of getting a potential top pairing or number 2 pairing defensive defenseman for $4.25 a year is not bad in and of itself, right? So they lock him up at that time. They're hoping he's going to be Dahlin's partner. And in 2023-2024, it seemed fine during the time in which he was healthy. He missed half the season due to injury, but when he was healthy, he had a goal, 6 assists, 7 points, and a plus-minus of 4 during that season. But his advanced stats this year, his comparative stats, were the best they'd ever been. They're positive. And at that point, you have to feel, the Sabres think, well, this is our guy. He's rounding into form. It wasn't a breakout year because he got hurt, but he was really rounding into form. But 2024-2025 was bad. Offensively, he had his best output he's had in the NHL. He had 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points, plus-minus of 2. Played 62 games. He missed a few due to injury as well. But he really struggled defensively. He lost puck battles. He struggled to engage in front of the net. He struggled to clear the puck. And as a defensive complement to Dahlin, he was clearly lacking. And the fact he couldn't stay healthy also meant that folks like Byram had to come up, and then like Byram's connection with Dahlin clearly was better. and clearly produced more than what Samuelsson had done, which is why a lot of fans are calling for Byram to get that job on the top pairing with Dahlin and for Samuelsson to go elsewhere. Because if there is a punching bag for Sabres fans, it is Samuelsson. Though you also have to consider, and this is not to make excuses for his struggles, but his development cycle was very accelerated. The organization likely rushed him through the AHL because they wanted to link him with Dahlin and give them as much time together in their youth as possible. But, even top NHL defensemen benefit from their time in the AHL. Again, I grew up in Maryland, so primarily my family would go watch the Hershey Bears. And during that time, when I was in high school, the Bears had Carl Alsner and John Carlson coming up for them. Now, if you know those two players, you know they became very solid NHL defensemen. Carlson has had a very nice long career with the Capitals. Alsner had some injury issues, which limited the length of his career. But you know that they became very solid NHL defensemen. And I think their time, both of them spent a year in Hershey. Alsner spent 2008, 2009, and some of 2009, 2010. Carlson did the playoffs in 08, 09, and he spent a lot of 2009, 2010 with the Bears. And that was big for their development. They got to play with veteran defensemen down there. They got to learn how to be physical and the way you have to play at a professional level in terms of physicality. Samuelsson did not have that benefit, and Samuelsson actually really struggled defensively in the AHL. Offensively, he was fantastic, and I think that maybe got the Sabres a little bit too excited for him. In the AHL, he played 55 games in Rochester from 2020 to 2021-22. He had 5 goals, 23 assists, 28 points. If you look at those numbers, that is more than he has put up in his entire 109 NHL games. His plus-minus during that stretch, though, those 55 games, his plus-minus was minus 19. Now, the Americs did not make the playoffs in 2020-2021. It was a very short season. But they did make the playoffs in 21-22, and they actually made the third round of the AHL playoffs. AHL playoffs are very weird. So, that doesn't mean they were, a conference finalist, because they were not a conference finalist. They were, a division finalist. Playoff system in that league is really strange. But aside from that, when you look at that point total, he was offensively effective, but his plus-minus was really bad on not a bad team. If you only took those 28 points and you said those are the only goals that the Americs scored while he was on the ice, then he would have had to give up 47 goals in his time on the ice to reach that minus 19. 47 goals in 55 games, nearly a goal a game. But they scored other goals that he didn't necessarily contribute. So he was clearly out there giving up a goal or two a game in order to reach that plus-minus. It's not great. So knowing that his defense was not very good in 2020, 2021, 2022, the Sabres probably should have given him more games in Rochester to figure out how to play defense. But I think because they were married to their original vision of him and Dahlin being together when they drafted him, they accelerated him through the minors. And they thought, his offense is great. He'll figure out the defense. But the NHL is not a place you can figure out defense. The speed is too fast. The skaters are too good. And if you haven't learned it at that point, you're not going to be able to just pick it up. So yes, Samuelsson has struggled a lot defensively in his career. But I think the thing that is more to blame is the Sabres rushing his development cycle more so than any lack of effort on his part. The injury issues are not on anyone. That's just unfortunate how that happens to some people. But yeah, the frustration is now, what do we do? We have Samuelsson, who was an assistant captain last year, who's on a 7-year contract. He can't play defense, but he's supposed to be a defensive defenseman. You have another defenseman who's now making more money per year in Byram, who has a good rapport with Dahlin. Those two work really, really well together. What do you do? Because you're paying both of these guys a lot of money. And if you really go with the theory that Kesselring and Power are going to be the second pairing in order to help Power develop and focus more on his strengths to kind of balance each other out. If you think that's what's going to happen, then what do? Do you alternate night to night? One's with Dahlin, the other's on the third pairing? Do you give all of the pairings? Do you not really have a third pairing? You have a number 1 and 2 number 2 pairings, and you split minutes that way? I don't think that would be great for like Power's development, so probably they don't do that. I don't think they rotate them either. But honestly, I don't think you can keep Samuelsson as the number 1 partner with Dahlin. What I would like to see, my personal view, is I think they should move Samuelsson to the third pairing and see if they can get a full season out of him. Yes, it's expensive, but treat this as kind of a development opportunity. He's 25, yes, so the development window is almost closed, but it's not totally closed. But treat this as an opportunity to get him through a full season, to not be so hard on his body, which is clearly fragile, kind of help him get through the full season. He provides a lot of experience. He can help out whoever he's paired with on that third pairing, be it Timmins or Zach Jones or Jacob Bryson, whoever he's paired with down there. He'll be a good asset down there with his veteran experience, and he'll have less pressure on him. He won't feel like he constantly has to assist and support Dahlin. Now, this all requires the Sabres to decide that their vision of 2018 is gone, which is very difficult. It's very difficult for this front office to let go of what it wants to do. They will hold on to the same mistake for years and years and years. They have to let go of that idea that Samuelsson is Dahlin's partner, I think. They have to give Bo and Byram the opportunity because they have a good connection. I think they can generate a lot of offense together. They have to let that go. They have to try that. If it doesn't work, you can bring Samuelsson back up. You can put Byram back down. You can move the pairings around. Like if Kesselring and Owen are having trouble working together, you can move things around. Maybe put Samuelsson with Owen. I don't know. I don't think that would work very well because both of them are struggling with the same things. But I'm saying that you have to be willing to be flexible, and you have to be willing to maybe put a guy who's making a fair bit of money on that third pairing just because you're trying to protect Power's development and you're trying to generate the best first pairing you possibly can, which right now is probably Dahlin and Byram. But we'll see what the Sabres decide to do. I think that's one of the reasons why this preseason is going to be very interesting. We'll see ultimately what pairings they decide to roll with for the year. And I think the start of the year is going to be interesting too, because I don't necessarily think it's going to be settled, and I think a lot's going to depend on the initial results or how things tune up initially. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the pairings should be? We are almost through all of them, all the defenders. Tomorrow is going to be Dahlin. So you know now all the defenders. We've talked about Dahlin enough. He's the clear number 1 defender, right? He's the only star on this team. So what do you think the pairing should be? Do you think Samuelsson should stay up there? Do you think Samuelsson should be at the third pair? Do you think we should kick Samuelsson off the team, send him to Rochester, send him to Europe, send him to England? I don't know. But, what do you think we should do? How should we handle this situation? Please leave a comment below. We'll talk about it down there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more of these 23 players in 23 days, please subscribe to the channel. After this is over, we'll be full on into covering Sabres hockey, news, post-game recaps, highlights, all of that. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. We'll be glad to have you. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, go Sabres. Bye-bye.